What's up, Sports Talk Detroit? Hey, we are going to continue doing these trade videos for Jerami Grant until one of two things happen. Either Jerami Grant is traded or he stays and the trade deadline passes, and I'm okay with either one. Well, I'm not okay depending on the trade, but I know I'm okay keeping him. So we want to talk to you today about a trade with the Atlanta Hawks and what we're hearing, some rumblings through different news sources and things like that. And this is a trade, I talked to you in the Minnesota Timberwolves trade, that I could get behind. I just think it's a far stretch for Pistons fans. So here's the trade. It's really simple. Detroit Pistons trade Jerami Grant to the Atlanta Hawks, and in return, the Atlanta Hawks send John Collins back to us. Okay, so here's basically what both teams are getting. Both teams are getting a guy that is a starting power forward. Both teams are getting a guy that is worth, well, right now, Jerami Grant, 20, but in the upper 20s of a contract, all right? They're getting about the same amount of contract. They're valued for about the same amount in the league, and they play the same position. Like, on paper, it makes sense. The big difference between the two, Jerami Grant's 28, John Collins is 24. So let's break down three different things here. Let's talk about their age. Let's talk about the contract that's going to happen. Let's talk about their stats. And then finally, we'll get into the opinion on, does this work? Is this a good deal for the Detroit Pistons? Is this a good deal for the Hawks, if you're a Hawks fan watching out there as well? Start with the contract. John Collins is on the first year of a 5-year, $125 million contract. Now, that's pretty simple math. 125 divided by 5, he's on a $25 million a year contract. Right now, Jerami Grant is making $20 million a year on a 3-year contract. So 3 years, $60 million. But it's also been reported that if Jerami Grant goes anywhere in a trade, if he goes anywhere in a trade, he wants to go to a team that will sign him this offseason to a 4-year extension worth $112 million. So that would put him in a much similar category. It would probably put him actually more at about $28 million a year. So contract, they're actually pretty similar on what you're asking. You do have the ability to extend Jerami Grant's out a little bit further right away, just 1 year further. So, because he'd have another 5 years where John Collins would have 4. As I said, Collins is only 24. Jerami Grant's 28. Jerami Grant came into his own a little bit later in this league. By coming to the Pistons, people saw his ability. So let's look at the stats. Points per game, Jerami Grant gets the edge, 20.1 points per game, while Collins is averaging 17. This is this year's stats. Jerami Grant's at 4.8 boards. John Collins is at 7.9. So he gets the edge there. They both average 1.1 blocks. Neither of them are assist monsters. 2.6 for Grant, 2 for Collins. Steals, 1.1 for Grant, 0.6 for Collins. And turnovers, Jerami Grant has almost twice as many turnovers at 2.1 per game to Collins 1.2. Where I think these guys separate is in two areas. It's efficiency with shooting and defense. So you have Jerami Grant, who is much lower in the numbers. This year he's shooting 33.1% from 3. That's not what you can expect. You can expect 35 to 36%, and he's shooting 41.4 from the field. That is close to what you can expect. He's about a 42 to 44% field goal shooter for his last couple years. John Collins is 42.6% from deep. I would expect him to go just under 40, and he's 53.7 overall. And so that just gives you an idea of how they play. Jerami Grant has the ball in his hands more. John Collins has the ball in his hand less. But I said there was another difference in this. Jerami Grant is going to do a much better job defending the athletic wings than John Collins would. John Collins is more of a traditional stretch 4, I like to say. I don't want to put him in that box, but Jerami Grant is definitely more flexible in who he defends. He defends positions 1 through 4. John Collins, I don't think you can say that for. So what's my opinion on this trade? I'd do it in a second. You get younger. The fact is that Collins at 24 fits the timeline of our rebuild. He would be the featured part of this offense. He would have a much more prominent role. Trae Young is very ball dominant in Atlanta, and while Cade has the ball in his hands a lot, they don't want it in his hands as much. I'm not saying they want to take it out of his hands a ton, but they don't want it in his hands as much. This could be a really good fit for Collins in Detroit. We would appreciate the offense that he would bring us, and I think Atlanta would greatly benefit from the defense that Jerami Grant could bring them and the versatility there. John Collins could play small ball 5 for the Pistons, and he could have some really good lineups. We saw how it's actually worked even with Trey Lyles, so John Collins would be such a better option there. But here's the reason I really love it for the Pistons. Minus the fact that he's younger, minus the fact that he's uber talented on the offensive end, he's not ball dominant. John Collins is not ball dominant, so you can keep the hands in Cade Cunningham. You can keep the ball in his hands. You can keep it in Killian's hand if you want to continue to develop him. Sadiq Bey. Like, you have all these guys that John Collins isn't going to take away from. The other thing I love about it, there's still a role for Hamidou Diallo on this team. That slashing wing, because John Collins is going to stretch the floor. I know Jerami Grant, Sadiq Bey do the same thing. But there's still a role for these guys, and he doesn't change that. So it's a one-on-one power forward swap. I think it works. I also think it works for Atlanta because they're in a position where they want to win now. We've made that clear. They're already in the market for trying to keep Trae Young forever, so they want to win now. He's a defensive stopper. He's probably a better number 2 scoring option at this point in his career than John Collins is. I think some of the numbers back that up. But Jerami Grant can create a little better off the dribble at this point in his career. So what do you think, Pistons? I think you'd be silly if you didn't want John Collins straight up in this trade. But I also think the Hawks would have to be kind of silly in order to do the trade. Right now there's about a $5 million difference. So who knows? Maybe they'd go for it if we threw in Josh Jackson. I doubt it. Corey Joseph. Hey. Maybe even Killian Hayes. I would have to consider it. All right, Sports Talk Detroit, thanks for watching this video. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below.